First story. OP is in the process of divorcing his wife of 12 years, who has been struggling with depression following incidents of self-harm that have also affected OP's own mental health, compounded by the trauma of parental self-harm. As a 31-year-old male, I find it challenging to maintain emotional intimacy with my 29-year-old spouse, especially after her recent self-harm episode, which she claims to have no memory of and describes as accidental. It's crucial to note the toxic nature of our relationship, characterized by ignored warning signs from the outset, fostering the unrealistic hope of improvement over time. Enduring years of both psychological and physical mistreatment, including infidelity and self-harm on her part, has brought us to this point. I've had first-hand experience of self-harm within my family, witnessing my father's struggles when I was 7, which were also prevalent on his side of the family. Moreover, my mother battled mental health issues and engaged in self-harm during her youth. Approximately 2 years ago, my wife resigned from her job due to stress and anxiety, a decision I supported given our relatively stable financial situation at the time, expecting a temporary break lasting between 3 to 6 months. To be honest, she was diagnosed with depression and anxiety as well as migraines. She's been through different medications that have been hit or miss, and at this point, I realize this is more likely due to her inconsistency with taking them as instructed. I let her take a little extra time in the beginning to try to let everything balance out. Afterwards, we agreed that she would look for work or school. She has done neither. Last year, I spent a lot of time, effort, and resources trying to keep her out and exploring and doing different things to try to help her get through everything. We went to more concerts than we ever have in a single year, saw so many movies and other shows, traveled, and went to conventions as much and as often as was possible and reasonable to do so at the time. We also had our old dog, who was 13 and also on anxiety and depression medications. I was and still am working 2 full-time jobs to make up for her lack of work income-wise. We are comfortable, though it would be nice to go to a single job again to regain some personal time. Throughout last year, and as was common every year either way, she had multiple breakdowns that resulted in any of the following: self-harm, light cuts on arms, etc., waking me up in the middle of the night and yelling at me for anything she could find a reason for, leading up to physically grabbing or pushing me, taunting me to hit her, never have, never will, throwing things, leaving for long periods. As I reflect on it, these episodes got progressively worse, and when she'd self-harm and try to hide them, the scars had gotten significantly larger and deeper. At some point in mid-December, I had a trip I had to take. The week leading up to that, she was complaining of a bad headache, so I told her to schedule an appointment and get to a doctor for it. She refused and said it was just like her previous migraine episode and would pass. I left it at that. In the days leading up to it, she became quite out of character, as if not all there. I was growing concerned, but nevertheless, I listened to her, stating that it was just her migraine and it would pass. I asked my parents and sister to keep an eye out and let me know if she got worse. As I was boarding, when I got there, things seemed to progress faster. Mixed signals from family, stating she seemed fine, just slightly off, to her texts being completely incoherent. She was up the entire night, documented only by the nonstop texts that were all over the place and near impossible to decipher. So, I got the first flight back I could that day. As I was getting on the plane, my sister said she seemed to be pretty off, and while I asked her to go to a doctor, she continued to refuse. So, my sister called an ambulance for her. When they were there, my sister asked about her and our dog's medications. I stated what they were, and I guess that lined up with whatever blood work they did, stating she mixed her meds with our dog's, which caused her to OD and nearly die. All this, and they released her that night. Still, when I landed and got back, my parents took her to Walmart where I met them. She was still clearly not herself, more openly hateful and careless towards me. I couldn't handle it. I almost broke down in tears in the store, and so I asked them to keep her, and I'd be back home later. During the period of her coming down from her OD, she was careless, made it clear she didn't want to be with me, would have preferred to go back home to her parents, etc. Mid-January, our dog isn't doing well. He is older, of course, but the vet stated it wasn't an old age issue. He wasn't sure what was wrong. There were numerous visits and medications to help, and it came down to kidney failure. We rushed him to a specialized hospital an hour away where they stated the options were to try to save him, but he'd be on dialysis the rest of his life, or let him go. He was tired, not himself. He didn't even perk up when he saw us the way he used to. As selfish as I wanted to be to push and just let him go on dialysis, I didn't want him to suffer either. So we let him go that day. I've been torn since. Today, he would have been 14. I can't help but feel like she also mixed his medications, which led to his kidney failure, but we've got no clear answer on that. I've been distant. I don't feel safe and haven't really. The more I think about it for some time when I'm around her, she's generally back to her normal, friendly self and spends time with my family, who also seem to have written everything off as okay. I left on a whim a couple of weeks ago to get away. I can't stand to be around her or any of my family, though they did nothing wrong. I just don't have the energy. I hate the dread feeling like her next breakdown can come at any moment, not knowing if it's going to be worse than the last time. I hate the fear of going on a work trip and coming back to her being dead because I don't know if that's ever going to happen with her or not, or if she's going to get better one day or not. I care about her and her well-being, but I don't know that I love her the same anymore, or that I can continue to carry on with this. AITA for considering divorce from all this? We've been together for 14 years and married for 12. Comments: Muddy 8723. NTA, but I'm struggling with the hospital incident being a possible self-harm attempt. As someone who has worked in the healthcare field for many years, if a patient overdoses on medication and has a history of depression or self-harming tendencies, the standard protocol is a 24 to 72-hour psychiatric hold. The only time that an individual wouldn't be kept is if it was truly just an accidental drug overdose. Even then, the person is kept until the majority of the drugs are flushed out of the system, and that's normally followed by the pumping of the stomach if the drugs were ingested. I'd be very concerned that she didn't manipulate the entire situation just to get you to come home from your work trip. Her actions afterward at the store wouldn't be of someone coming down from the OD. She may have been groggy, lethargic, and out of it, but not argumentative and combative. My family is full of drug addicts, and I've seen these situations. Unfortunately, OP, I think for your own sanity and safety, you need to leave and file for divorce. This is never going to get better. OP, I definitely understand the struggle with the hospital incident. I do as well. Even my sister's husband found it odd that they'd release her so quickly. I have a hunch that between her and my mom, they played it off as an accident and talked them out of committing her further. Update 10 days later, just a follow-up to this post. I've been in and out of it. Emotions range from feeling guilty to regret, anger, and relief. We went on a long drive a while back to talk, and I told her she needed to go back to her parents. I said I couldn't keep living like this, in fear of another breakdown, in fear of leaving and coming back home to find her dead. I can't keep waking up throughout the night expecting her to wake up and go on a rampage. She understandably cried and tried to reason with me. She said she'd go to therapy, get a job, etc. All the things she's had near 3 years to do to take care of herself while I work multiple jobs to support her and give her the time, space, and resources she needs to take care of herself. As much as it hurts, I still believe that deep down she actually wants this to happen. She just didn't want to be the one to make the decision. Fast forward to yesterday, she sent a text asking about what to put down on tax forms. She applied for and got a local job. I asked her why she did that and if our talk meant nothing to her. She responded, "Of course it did, and that's why I decided I wanted to stay and work things out with you." That absolutely set me off, as if she didn't listen to a word I said or didn't respect my request or me. How can you convince yourself that that is what needs to happen when that's what you've had years to do and have made next to no progress? So, I sent quite a wall of text explaining how that made me feel and that if she opted to stay, that's fine, and I'll leave. She kept her response short with, "I get it. I'll turn the job down and leave as soon as possible." My one main request with all this was that she have help getting to her parents because it's an 18-plus-hour drive that I don't feel comfortable letting her make alone. Maybe I'm wrong for that, but all things considered, I want her safe. I told her this again, and she stated, "I don't need you to go with me. I'll be fine." So, I told her she needed to talk to her parents and brother and see if they'd help her or do what she wants and go it alone. That would only make my decisions moving forward more clear. That said, my parents were over that evening for dinner. It became clear also that my mom had a hand in her decisions around staying, as well as gave me the hunch that she helped pull my wife out of the hospital prematurely. My mom has a history of similar mental health behavior and has ended up in the hospital multiple times from self-harming attempts, thoughts, etc. It used to be extremely bad when we were kids, particularly by high school age, to the point of her attempting to jump out of a car multiple times on the highway, consuming an entire pill bottle, etc. My dad committed self-harm when I was little. I hardly remember him, so I've grown up with these experiences, and I truly do not want to keep living my life this way. Off the tangent, why do I believe my mom also had a hand in my wife saying she was getting a job again and staying, as opposed to following my request? My mom cried and said, "We love you and we're here for you to support you." But 12 years and left it at that. She is quite the intense, typical Christian, set in her ways, which adds to my belief they've been plotting on how to not let me put my foot down on sending her back to her parents. All that said, while she will be getting back to them most likely in the next couple of weeks, I can't help but feel like I'm giving up too easily, like I'm not doing enough, doing good enough, and feeling guilty about the decision. There is regret setting in and sadness, but overall, it is numb. So, with this update, AITA for standing my ground on having my wife go back to her parents until she can sort herself out? Before bed last night, she came to tell me she talked to her family. Her brother wasn't sure when he'd be able to get time off. She tried to say, "So if you don't want to go with me, I can take myself. It's fine," which also set me off and also confirmed that I was right to have this in text this time because she once again was trying to twist it to her benefit. I told her not to say that I offered to go with her if they couldn't help her out, and she was the one who told me she didn't need me to go, and I wasn't going to let her twist it. She'd said something else and tried to spin it around on me again, and I cut it off and said, "That's the end of the conversation. I'm not playing games, and I'm not letting her twist shit again." Needless to say, that interaction angered me, and yet this morning I'm back on the feeling guilty side of the fence. Update: her brother will be coming to pick her up this week, afterwards. I think I'll be working on moving away from everyone myself, as well as finding a good therapist to work through my own traumas and issues. It's been a rough year so far with all the ups and downs, in the past couple weeks in particular. Thank you all for the kind words and support. To those concerned I may end up like my father, I appreciate the concern, but I will stand firm in the promise I made to myself growing up that I would not turn into that. While I agree that my mother likely played some role in that, he was also abusive. I come from quite a dysfunctional family line, and perhaps this step of separating from my spouse is a step in breaking that cycle. Thank you all for your support. It has helped give me some sort of direction to move forward. Comments performance GRW dealing with someone's mental health struggles, especially when they affect your own well-being, is incredibly challenging. It's natural to feel conflicted and overwhelmed by all these emotions. You're not alone in feeling this way, OP. Thank you for sharing. That truly this whole ordeal has been difficult, and this is the first time, over many times, I've decided to stand my ground on this decision. So it's been quite hard to process, but all I can think about is how it may be affecting her. Amel614, you've spent too long thinking about her. When is it your turn to think about yourself? You've already been mentally, physically, and emotionally declining trying to help her. Unfortunately, you can't help someone who doesn't want help. And her doing all this now is not because of her. It's about what she is about to lose. She doesn't want to lose you, so she is trying for you and your relationship, not herself. She will be back to doing what she's always done in a couple of weeks to a couple of months, I guarantee you. She will. You can lead a horse to water, no matter how many times, ways, or types, but you cannot force them to drink. OP, I think this past year, in general, has solidified this, as I've tried to start focusing more on myself. The interruptions caused by her made things difficult, but as hard as it is, you are likely right that she will fall back to her usual ways in a few months, and I can't gamble on that risk anymore. Beneficial Youth 928, it kind of sounds like she has BPD. OP, her original diagnosis was anxiety and depression, but her behavior imitates BPD very much like my mom was second-story delusional. Opie asked his brother not to bring his husband to his wedding because his fiancé's family is homophobic. Now he's wondering why his brother's husband kicked him out. My fiancé and I are a few months into planning our wedding, and we are now deciding on who we are inviting. My fiancée comes from a super conservative and religious background but has thankfully grown way beyond that. Otherwise, I couldn't marry her. Her parents, however, are still super conservative and homophobic and delight in talking SHD and all sorts of horrible things about the LGBT community. Other members of her family are like this as well, some more violently vocal than others. Well, for our wedding, we have decided that everyone we invite can bring a +1, subject to our approval, of course. I thought about it for a really long time about my older brother and his husband. They've been married for 3 years, and I don't want his husband to attend with him. El drama, if they attend together, has the potential to get out of hand, and that is something I don't want to have to deal with on my wedding day. My fiancée also agrees with me on this. We can't not invite her parents, and we can't not invite my brother, so we felt our only option was to not invite his husband. Who knows what could be said or done if he attends, and yeah, we're being selfish, but it's our wedding. I'm really not sure how he'll react, though. It took my brother a long time to accept himself, and I'm sure this won't feel good, but at the same time, maybe his husband won't want to attend anyway. I have nothing against my brother's husband. He is a lovely man, but we are just trying to have the day go smoothly. When we extend the invitation out, I think I'm going to go to my brother and ask him not to bring his husband for all the reasons above. So what if I asked him not to bring his husband? Verdict: a roll. Relevant comments backstage. Inia, White EA. I understand it's to make life easier for a day that should be important to you, but honestly, it's still a SHDD thing to do. Your wife needs to tell her family to just not be a roles for 5 hours out of their lives. Noisome Wind, White EA. Instead of disinviting the bigots who would cause problems, you're choosing to disinvite a decent person who happens to be gay. Let me ask you, OP, are you going to exclude your brother and his husband from every family event from now on? Birthdays? Holidays? What happens if you have kids? Will you exclude them from your kids' lives because your wife's family thinks they'll be a bad influence? What if your kids are LGBT? Will you cut off your wife's family then? Or will you let them mistreat your own children? What do you think your exclusion of your brother's husband will teach your kids? This is not the only time their beliefs will cause problems, and you need to think about how you're going to proceed from here on out and the consequences your choices will have in the years to come. OP, this is a good point. I never thought of it this way, actually. Pleasant addition. OP, consider that you're considering siding with people who are more bigoted than Mike effing Pence. OP, noted. CRJG95, if they were massive racists, would you ban all black people from your wedding to keep them happy? OP, no hippo, ATA. Wow, you'll make the appearance of siding with homophobes rather than being inclusive. You're clearly not as open-minded as you think you are. OP, maybe I'm not. Honestly, everyone's responses are really making me second-guess my decision. Pan up Fritz, White EI. So much. It's hard to believe this is real. Be prepared to never speak to your brother again if you go through with this. What a slap in the face for him and his husband. It isn't their fault that your in-laws can't control their bigotry for one day. OP, I do realize that maybe I am going about this wrong. It's giving me a chance to think about it. Pant Fritz, I'm so happy to hear that. Thanks for listening. OP, I might think about looking into some security or something like that just in case. Update, Reddit. My original post got so much attention, and I got a lot of requests for an update. So here you go. I went to my brother and his husband and mentioned that there was the potential for some serious negative reactions from my fiancé's family, and I asked them what they thought about my brother coming solo without his husband to my wedding. I thought I was providing a middle ground by asking them their opinion instead of just delegating who he could bring. Unfortunately, this didn't go as planned, and they both got super offended and said that I was discriminating against them. I told them that wasn't what I was doing because I was coming to them first and asking them what they thought and what they wanted to do, but they didn't listen, and now it's all left. My brother said he doesn't know if he still wants to come to the wedding, and his husband got in my face and told me that I needed to leave. This was a few days ago, and he still isn't talking to me. It's making me pretty upset. My fiancé says I did the right thing, though. I'm going to try and reach out to him closer to the wedding when things have calmed down, as I really want him there anyway. Everyone's responses really helped me out, and I wanted to update. Top comments, Radio Supply, we told you so. I don't know, man. National Mouse, seriously. and your fiancé said you did the right thing. There are literally over 1,700 comments from people telling you how wrong it was to disinvite your brother. He has every right to be upset. You screwed up big time, man. Evil Ginger. OP. The entire internet, white EA, and here's why. Also, OP. How was I in a role AEL of white EA? You really didn't learn anything from your last threat. Your brother saw right through you that you even considered asking your brother to leave his husband at home to appease your bigoted in-laws, told your brother everything he needed to know, and you were cowardly about it. But now your brother has solved your dilemma for you, and your in-laws will have a dandy time at your wedding. Third story, BP. Overheard a conversation between her narcissistic Phil and husband who were planning to baby trap her so she would not file for divorce. Now, all of a sudden, they are physically assaulting each other, hurting OP, and her husband is overly concerned about her. My marriage has been struggling for the last year. I, 32F, have been married to my husband, 33M, for 6 years. We have been together for 8 years, and we have known each other for over 20 years. My husband is extremely accommodating. He doesn't help me with any household chores, even when we both have the same workday. He stalls until I lose patience and do it myself. This took a toll on our relationship, as it is stressful to take care of the house and my daughter alone and also collect the socks and shirts that he scatters everywhere. Now, what was the last straw? We don't have a car, and we needed to go buy some things. I had planned the day to do it in the morning, and he would go with me. I woke up and did several tasks while he stayed on the couch. I didn't say anything because it was his day off. When we were close to leaving time, my Phil called and asked for a favor. He got up and said he would help him. It would be quick, and that our Phil would give us a ride afterward. Okay, it wasn't our plan, but I can wait another 2 hours. My Phil is a hustler, lives off freelance work, and is supported by his mother, my husband's grandmother. He never works, always takes money, and never pays. It's a mess, in addition to always making inappropriate and false comments. He is a narcissist. That's why my mother-in-law divorced him. Well, 3 hours later, they arrive, and I get in the car. My Phil asks why my daughter, F4, didn't go to school, and I say that I let her miss it because it was just a play day, and she asked to go shopping with me. And he simply says that I'm lazy, and I didn't want to take her to school out of laziness. That I'm committed to going to the gym, and that I should have the same commitment to school. He was rude and accusatory, as if he were recriminating me. I felt my blood boiling in my veins. Firstly, because I do 1,000 things a day and barely have time to rest, and secondly, because my father-in-law is the laziest person I've ever seen. He's never worked in his life. I took a deep breath and tried to control myself because I wanted to curse him. I looked at my husband, waiting for him to say something to his father. Anything. He did not say anything. He didn't defend me. He didn't even try to explain anything. What did I expect? For him to fight? No, but for him to at least say, "Don't talk to my wife like that," or "That's not true." This is not the first time my husband has failed to respond to someone in his family who says something inappropriate. He says it's better to avoid a fight, or that's just how they are. And on that day, all our marital problems kept playing in my mind. I was very disappointed, and I can't look at him any other way unless I dislike him. I have been fighting for my marriage, but I feel like he isn't fighting for me. And now I really want to file for divorce. I'm hurt, and I'm afraid I'm overreacting because of this. Top comments, Dillis and Shanko. Yeah, I don't blame you for being frustrated. Boring Clothes 242. In terms of freeloading, it doesn't sound like the apple falls far from the tree with your husband and his father. I'd find it incredibly hard to stay attracted to and maintain respect for someone so sedentary. He doesn't express any desire to contribute to your household or the care of your child, and he is so complacent that he isn't willing to stand up for you. If everything is down to you, what would you lose without him? If he stalls until you give in and take over his share of responsibilities, what is he actually doing that you couldn't do yourself as a single parent? Or how is your situation now any different from being a single parent? If anything, the only thing you'd be missing is the constant resentment that arises when you're consistently made aware that you're in a partnership where you're giving everything and receiving nothing back. Sharing custody would ironically mean that you and your partner would have more equal caring responsibilities for your child than you seemingly currently do in your marriage. If you haven't expressed these issues to him, and how close you are to calling it quits, now is the time to do so. If you've already tried to know Ale, then maybe it's time to start thinking about the logistics of ending your marriage. Update. A few weeks ago, I made a post about my wedding. Well, this is an update. I'm going to file for divorce. Since I wrote here, many things have happened, but long story short, I told my husband it wasn't working for me anymore. I asked for time to put things in order. He didn't respect my space. In a few days, he got sick and ended up staying at home. He was at my Phil's house, and he was sleeping on the couch. He asked us to go to individual and couples therapy, and he said he didn't want to lose me. A few days ago, my Bill came to visit me, and they were talking about our marriage. I'm not proud to say this, but I overheard part of the conversation. My husband said he was trying hard to get back to being intimate and that he intended to get me pregnant, knowing that with another child, I would never leave him. My Bill laughed and said he would have to pierce more condoms for this. I don't take birth control at the moment, and we are using condoms as contraception. I'm so angry that I've barely been able to look at him the last few days. I've been avoiding him, and honestly, there's no more time to fix our marriage. How could he be capable of something like this? I feel deceived and manipulated in ways I can barely explain. He still doesn't know that I heard, and he doesn't know that I'm going to file for divorce. Top comments. Grandma's Villa. Read your original post and think you are doing the right thing by divorcing your husband. Don't tell him anything until you are ready to serve him the paper. Make sure not to get intimate just in case. Keep your plan close to your chest until you're ready to serve. Tell someone you trust if you're aware of your plan in case you need support. Update 2. Event. Not exactly an update, but a rant. Today, I went to my great-grandmother's house, my husband's grandmother. We sat down to talk, and she told me about a big fight between Phil and my husband and that my husband had cut him off. I knew that they hadn't spoken for weeks. My husband arrived, and we stopped gossiping in the kitchen and talked about trivial matters. At one point, we heard the gate slam. The gate at Grandma's house is noisy, and my husband got up and went to see who had entered. Moments passed, and we began to hear altered voices. My husband and my Phil were yelling at each other, and my husband was saying things like, "You never recognize what we do and the opportunities we give you. You've always been a terrible son, a terrible brother, a terrible father, and a terrible husband. And I'm tired of trying to help you. I did more than I should have, and you never get better." Yes, Grandma and I were listening behind the door, but when the argument got more intense, I entered the room and started asking them to calm down. Grandma can't be nervous, and she was nervous. I have never seen my husband so nervous in the almost 25 years I have known him. As I said in my first post, he is not confrontational and does not fight, but my husband attacked my father-in-law, pinned him against the wall, and shook him. I ran and tried to push them away. At some point, I put my hand on my Phil's arm, and he turned sharply. I felt pain, but I was too nervous to see what had happened. My husband reacted to this attitude by pressing my father-in-law even tighter against the wall, and it was with great difficulty that I managed to push my husband away, who was beside himself, and expel my Phil from Grandma's house. My wrist turned purple and swelled at the same moment. My husband turned pale when he saw it. We went to the hospital, and I spent the rest of the day between doctors and x-rays. No bone was broken, but the orthoptist had to put it back in place, and it hurt a lot. I even cried. I will use a compressor for 5 days. I'm writing this with my left hand. My wrist is hurting a lot, and my husband is torn between worrying about me and going to fight with his father. He went to get my medicine and stopped by work to catch some time off. I demanded an explanation when he returned. I want to know why my husband became so extreme. What led to all this? I'm unsure of my next step. My recent writing was merely an outlet for my emotions. The discussion with Bill and my impending departure remain undisclosed to him. My mind is consumed by thoughts of Phil's actions. We appreciate your viewership. Should you enjoy such narratives, there are additional tales awaiting you. Feel free to subscribe to our channel, like, and share the video with your friends.